So fun fact,
Okay.
people always think I have a new cup of coffee, but I reuse the same coffee cup for about probably 5 to 6 times before
Oh,
I actually get rid of it.
nice.
So,
I love paper pulp in my coffee.
hashtag sustainability
Oh,
until you
I
use
just
it on
reuse
this
these.
but so there is nothing like the lid of a
It's
hot
true.
cup.
It's true.
And I think that we should really ask people about this because I think that that's why Starbucks is so successful because
Yeah.
each of their lids are always super sip friendly.
Super sip friendly, and
Friendly.
this is an infomercial for Starbucks now, but they have their coffee's always the same temperature every time. They have standards around their coffee temperature, so it's, like, hot, but not too hot to drink. Dunkin', on the other hand, will scorch your mouth. Scorch. I mean,
Or
you
they
don't drink
will
Dunkin', I know, but,
no, or
you
when I
know.
did though, or it would be so cold that I'm like, "Is it really a hot coffee or did I order cold coffee?" Like, come on.
Mhm.
So that is why I do the same thing for the Starbucks cup. I will get Starbucks, like, once, and then I'll reuse the cup for iced coffee at home.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Yep.
you can use for, like, 25 times. That's like a
Tw
banger.
25. When I'm really feeling fancy, I'll go to Marshall's and get the seasonal cups. I think we were looking at those when we were at TJ Maxx, and I'll put them, like, next to my Keurig, and I'll feel like I'm in a, like, this is my coffee bar, but really it's just paper cups, and
I mean,
there's no stirrers.
that is prime coffee time right there, you know?
Mhm,
I don't know if
mhm.
you have a ritual with your coffee, but I have really gotten into one, especially
What?
during this time and making my infused honey, like, that is part of my ritual. I
I
have
love a
infused
good
honey,
ritual.
I got my cacao, and again, it's different than cocoa. It's different than cocoa. It's
So
cacao.
now you know now.
For so.
For so. Well, I love a good ritual. And I think it's such a great way to kind of open our conversation today because really our whole brand, our whole movement of feeling called is about intention and taking a moment to kind of sink deeper into the awareness and the magic and the moments that help bring more richness to our lives. And I know that as we kind of continue with finding our way of our own mission of our company and what we're doing, there's been so many opportunities to really sink deeper into what is intentional brand building look like and feel like. And I think for us, that's been like step one is always just really allowing ourselves to show up fully in our own energy and building around that. So when we talk about our mission and our purpose with feeling called, there's a lot of pathways that are emerging, but it's important to tie them all together so that anybody listening that doesn't know who we are, what we do, how we can support you on your path, we always like to make sure that we're infusing that intention and clarity into how we're discussing what we're doing and why we're here spreading some of these messages. So, in
Yeah.
the feeling called movement, it really is this podcast is an extension of creating a platform for the voice of that purpose and that passion. And I'm super excited to have some guests on in the coming weeks now that we're getting that process refined and defined so we can really sink deeper into people's zone of genius and understand the pathways that they took to step fully into that place of empowerment.
Yeah, for sure. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one, and I think the other great part about us is that, yes, we are focused on the business end of things, but without the business or without the person, there is no business. So,
Mhm.
we have this whole person avenue that we take when we're talking about, like, what does brand development look like? What is business strategy? And how does that really connect with who the person is and the avenues that they wanna go, and also, like, going deeper into what traumas or what generational things might be coming up for them along the way.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah.
more than just kind of a at face value, we really dig deep into understanding our clients, what they're going through, and, we do have the opportunity and ability to coach if that is something that's needed along the way too. So, I think we're just so diverse in all that we offer. And Lauren and I were having this conversation the other day. It's like you need social media, like, boom, I can hop in on that. You need a quick template, boom, we can hop in on that.
Yeah.
And not that we want to be in every single space, but that's kind of one of the things that when you have experiences along the way and you just take from them, kind of you're building your own resume as well. So even though it might not be something that you want to do, I can hop in on a Canva doc and I can make
Right.
something because I've done that before, or,
Mhm.
vice versa. So I just think it's a space that we're in and that we get to move and groove and kind of create this new way for ourselves, our business, but then also giving other people permission to be like, this way doesn't fit me anymore. And I think I want to do something new. So we have a lot of us.
Yeah. Well, I wanna stick with the whole person paradigm because that really is central to what we're doing and how we do it. And even, the approachability and the conversation of knowing that we're going through the same things as founders and entrepreneurs. And so you might be in a position where you have a ton of transferable skill sets and you can do a lot of things. And then part of the retro on kind of needing to tap into all of those things just to get things lifted and get things started. You start where you are before you can resource up, is then the reflection point of kind of sitting with that and say, okay, what of that process really brought me into my joy, my flow state? And
Yep.
can I do it? Yes. Do I want to do it? Maybe. Maybe it's more of a conversation of a percentage of time, right? Versus needing to be in it all the time. And I think that that feeling in and of itself is the essence of feeling called. And as we move our energy into creation and in and out of different tactics and support models, we want to make sure that whatever we're creating for ourselves and our business and for our clients, that the brand itself can hold that energy of going in the direction where you feel called to go next. And it doesn't feel like a completely new pathway. It feels integrated into the larger vision. So I think it's really cool that we're kind of going through that ourselves at the same time that we're supporting our clients in it.
Yeah, and we catch each other too because the other day
Hell
we had a
yeah.
meeting with a client talking about social media management, and for the past couple of months, I'm like, I know the one thing I don't wanna do is social media management, but I've been helping with one of our clients because we just launched, their brand and business, and so I kinda hopped in because that's part of the the launch, and I wanted to make sure like she was super busy doing a lot of stuff in the store and kind of, on her end, that I didn't want social media to be something that was on her plate. So I kind of took
Mhm.
it, and I did find joy with doing it, but it's one of those things where it's like I kind of, handing it back i- is like a struggle in and of itself because it's kind
Mhm.
of like I think I use the
It's the
analogy of
baby.
back the baby that isn't yours, and you're like,
No, I have
like the
visitation rights,
stepmom.
don't I?
I know, I'm like the stepmom that's like, handling, and then I gotta hand it back, and then I'm like, "Well, and so
I know.
even in that moment though, Lauren brought me back, she's like, "You don't wanna do this." And for me, social media management, and for anybody, social media in general is like a constant thing. Like, you have to
Mhm.
respond to DMs in a certain amount of time, you have to respond to comments, and then that gets me into, like, this loop of always checking my phone,
Yeah.
which I know and which I totally wanna stay away from. If anybody knows me, I'm always on do not disturb for that
Mhm.
reason, so if
I
you do
bust through that wall every day,
'cause I added you to my favorites.
kicking the door down.
But
Mm.
anybody who, like, I think is gonna call me or that, like, might need me, they're added to favorites so that their calls can come through. But,
I accept that.
anybody else, I don't, because for me, I already have, like, ADHD brain sometimes and, like, constantly and just in this overstimulated world just in general, that I have to set those boundaries for myself, and that's being on do not disturb all the time, and that's
Mhm.
really making it, clear to people that, like, I will get back to you. Yes, it says
Yes.
do not disturb, but, like, you can still text me. I'll get back to you when I see it.
Yeah, I think the root of that, and I think it's important in the context of work, particularly if we're good at things, is really defining what you want your lifestyle to be. And
Yeah.
if part of your lifestyle, you really enjoy this kind of always on, fast paced purpose, with some people really do that, like it gives them a reason to move throughout their day. But other people really do not. And I remember that was something that I realized how much I did not like that after I left my corporate role. And that was a big part of always needing to be on and always dealing with crisis comms, that can kind of build up throughout the day. And an anxiety can live there of what am I not checking? What did I miss? What did I not respond to? Because that's part of the gift, right? There's a quality to what's being delivered. But then it's very easy for that day to turn into the next day to turn into the next. So when you're handing back the baby, part of that is knowing that that baby might live in a different lifestyle too, and it might not be in that
It
pace
doesn't
or
eat
that
organic
direction.
all the
It doesn't
time.
eat organic. There might be some tablet parenting involved. And that's no, I mean, I gotta say, like, and they're still kind of there, but it's about balance. Where is it, just a season of where you're able to imprint the energy. And I think, particularly in the way we handle the whole person brand development construct, is weaving ourselves energetically so much into the people involved and the intention around the creation of the experience through the creative
Yes.
development, through the customer interaction, through the launch events. And, our influencer event was a great example. You could feel the energy of that event because it was curated.
Yep.
And curated brands in and of themselves are the experience. You just know it when you feel it, you can see it. So then it becomes okay, what does it take for us to deliver at that level all the time? And what is our capacity for having maybe one client in that space? And then the rest of the model where we look at accessibility, and also the work that we do is in the space of entrepreneurs and startups and people that are kind of trying to step into this new chapter, all the way up to fully developed organizations that maybe really want to hone their message and their resonance with their audience because it's not working. Right.
Yeah.
So the accessibility part really comes into play. And that's core to what we're moving into next, is making sure that we have options where people can take more of a DIY pathway on some of this development and don't really have to worry about how to place those resource bets when they're first getting started, because it's more of an accessible price point. So those are things that I'm excited to dip into for where we're going as well.
Yeah, and just going back to kind of the brand stuff, and if you think of like Walmart versus Target, you can kind of immediately think of how you feel when you
Hmm.
walk into a Walmart. You probably have on like mismatched clothes, you might have on pajamas, you might have on in the middle of
There's
winter, like
SpongeBob involved. Yeah.
there certainly is SpongeBob involved.
I
And
love a Krabby Patty. You know what I'm saying?
and then you're like, "Okay, but if I go to Target, like, you might think a little bit more about, like, what you might be wearing." I mean, I know I
Mhm.
do that. I'm like, at Walmart, I know I can let my flag fly, okay? I go up in
And they're
there.
like, "Welcome, child."
I'm in the people of Walmart coloring book somewhere. I know it, and that's okay. I be in there, like, completely all jacked up. No bra on. It'll be the middle of winters. I got flip-flops on, you
You
know?
got a pot for your plant in this
I
arm and some organic coffee in this arm.
Uh, no, we don't get coffee at Walmart, okay? That is
See,
totally
that's
an
Target. That's
Arthur.
Target.
No, that's an Arthur thing. I go to
See,
store.
this is the gradient.
So when you think of
Yeah.
right, and there's a market for everybody. Walmart has they're successful because they know that, like, that is who
That's
their
their
market
yep.
is. The
Mhm.
people who need something quick, or, like, they're going in there and they don't we don't need to think of how we look when we go into Walmart. I
Mhm.
think I actually told you the one day I had, like, a whole suit on, and I was like, "I feel like I
You're
don't
like,
belong here."
"Mm-mm.
Everybody's
I need
looking
to be
at
going into
me.
Arthur's."
Like, everybody's looking at me right
Like,
now,
"Is
like
the
I'm the
FBI
one.
here? Like, what's
I tell
women
you
in
what,
black?"
I didn't get checked on my receipt, I'll tell you that one. They were like, "No, ma'am, you can just go. Here, we'll give you the back exit at this point."
In
But
fact, they're like, "Are you interested in a management role?"
and they're like, I'm like, "I don't belong here." I literally felt like everybody was looking at me. I'm like, "Holy shit, I should not be in Walmart right now."
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
just, like, when you think of, and even the Starbucks versus Dunkin', yes, there's a totally different, and we can have both, and we do have both, but it's kind of like at what point are we gonna get which one, right? If I'm gonna
Yes.
go in somewhere and work for the day, then likely I'm going to go to
Mhm.
a Starbucks, right?
Yep,
That's kind of what they have the brand experience around. I'm not gonna go
yep.
into Dunkin' to work ever, like,
Oh, I
ever.
know. I know.
But if I'm going to drive through and grab a quick coffee or something like that, then, like, I
Mhm.
might go to a Dunkin', or if I want a
Yeah.
meal deal or something like that, boom, I'm gonna go to Dunkin'.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's knowing, when someone's gonna kind of come into your store or what you want that brand experience to be, and kind of putting that experience out there so people can see themselves doing it, right?
Yep,
So
100%. And I think that is the core of what brand positioning is really trying to get at. I remember back in the day, I worked in a commercial real estate firm and I was involved in making the relocation and new growth packages. So we would pick strategic real estate based on where the client's brand position was and what other businesses kind of match that vibe, right? Because that you're going to see the Starbucks in the Target, right? Prime example of
yeah,
how of the strategy behind that. And I
that's a cool
remember, you know what I'm saying?
more,
The
more.
it was really interesting because I remember at a time where I was kind of newer to an executive team and we were looking at relocation strategies. And there was this great piece of real estate that opened up for a potential location. And at the time, we had really strategically over years built ourselves into a brand position of value. A value brand position is a higher threshold, there's a better experience. It's kind of like the model you get what you pay for. And
Yeah.
then discount brands, that is a very strategic place. Walmart knows their place. They
Yep.
know their market, they know their people, and you feel at home if you're in that space, right? So I remember they wanted to open this location that was in more of a discount brand market. Just in terms of like, even if you run the numbers on the traffic counts and what type of sales volume and really what's the pricing strategy. Because if you go into that market, you better be ready to cut your prices. You're going to
Mhm.
have to, cut them pretty hard. And this is why when we look at like pricing strategies and offer strategies, particularly if you're just getting started out, if you're coming out of the gate with deep discounts, that's a hard thing to wind back because now in the consumer's mindset, they're thinking, well, this is kind of like the JC Penney of coupon strategy, right? They expect it every time. And let's say I'm at a table of 10 executives in this conversation. I was the only one in that room that said, this location does not resonate with our brand at all. It absolutely is not the right location. And then it becomes, how do you defend that strategy? And that's where the data comes in, right?
Mhm.
And I think to kind of strip away the strategy of it and bring back it to the conversation, the points that you just made around just knowing yourself, knowing your customer base, knowing your message and your mission, and what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known for an online experience that's clunky and manual? Maybe that's all you're working with right now, and that's just part of your resource discussion. So then you go into it with more of an open mindset of understanding that this is a part of my client experience right now. And so maybe my pricing should reflect that, right? So it's
Yeah.
all kind of wrapped into how much energy you pour into the creation and cultivation of the brand.
Yeah, and I love our partnership because I speak from, like, just kind of experience, and you're speaking from, like, an actual, like, lens of the formal, like, verbiage and stuff like that. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, da, da, da," and then you're able to wrap that all in and be like, "Okay, so here is how exactly what you said is, like, an actual something that people can take away from."
Well, no, and some people might hear these things, right, in
Yeah,
conversation too, particularly if you're somebody that is still in corporate. This language is, and this is, I always felt like I was a translator because I would have to take that conversation from the boardroom and then bring it back to my team and explain it just like that. Right. You know what I mean? It's the translation of what we're doing to make it approachable and not scary because this stuff can feel like intimidating. Like, well,
yeah,
I don't know what my brand position is. Well, let's
right.
strip that back and really look at it.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
why I love our partnership because, again, like, I'm able to kind of just speak and word vomit from just, like, what I've done. Like, I don't have any schooling in branding or marketing or anything. Human
Human
resource.
resources.
I don't have any formal education in
Thank
that,
you for
right?
doing that.
And not that we need it, but it's really cool to have someone who has that experience and who does have that education and background take from what I'm kind of just word vomiting and like what I'm seeing, right? And that'll go into our kind of intuition conversation and what I'm
100%.
intuitively pulling in from the universe and what I'm getting. And then you
Mhm.
are able to explain it in a way that is like, okay, well, here is like this brand side or this marketing angle, or, here is
Mhm.
the actual verbiage that you're supposed like that people use in the corporate sense. So you're able
Yeah.
to kind of pull that all in. And that's why I love our relationship.
Thank you so much. Well, I what I love about you and everything that you
Oh,
just
and by
said
the
is
way, we're in, like, our jammies on a Saturday morning and raining,
Jim,
so,
I woke up like this.
yep, sure did. As you can tell, and I'm in my basement, so
I
you're gonna see
mean,
wood
comfy
boards.
as
I'm
queen.
okay. I'm okay.
I'm
In the
okay.
basement somewhere. There's wood boards all around. I'm
Is this a
okay.
secure line? But I agree. I think that especially when you're like thinking about if you're building a team or you're going into business with somebody, where are the complementary strengths and how do those come together to create magic? And I think, even hearing you describe your process for me, when I hear you, it's stream of consciousness.
Mhm.
Hold on one second. What's up? Are you really coming in here to talk to me about apple strudel? Yes. And I told you only to come in here if it's an emergency, right?
That's an emergency if I've ever
What
heard
the
one.
heck? Some
Give the
toaster
kid an
strudel?
apple
Bud,
strudel.
come back in here. Let's have a redo
Give
on that.
you have
Now I feel like a jackhat. Come here, please. Oh, now
give the
he's gone.
boy his toaster strudel.
Hold on.
Mom, this was an emergency.
What the
What
fuck?
do
We
you
had like such a conversation about this before we started. Okay. I think we need a little bit of a redo on that. First of all, I'm sorry for. Come here. Let me see your face. I'm sorry for attacking you like that. I just know that we talked about the definition of emergency, and I'm just curious if you think toaster strudel falls into that.
nod your head yes?
Do you think? I mean, you might think
Auntie's
that toaster
nodding
strudel is
yes.
the emergency. Do you? Okay, well, that's fair. Our definition of emergency is a little different. I do think that it's important that you did ask me because there's a toaster involved. And if Sissy isn't up yet, she is up. So maybe we can ask Sissy. Can you tell her that mommy said I need her to make you a toaster strudel? Thank you, bud. Okay. All right. I love you. Okay, back to stream of consciousness.
I mean, that's an emergency if I've ever heard
You
one.
know what I'm saying? Oh, man. The emergency of toaster strudel. I mean, it is pretty good. I mean, if you're in the matrix.
No.
So, when we think about the concept of stream of consciousness and what it means to kind of be in flow state when you're communicating, I think this gives us so much flexibility, especially as we're in the strategic consulting space, all the way down to like brand activation and in the room motivation and inspiration. The fact that we're able to go into all of those spaces, just the two of us, and understand those audiences, and maybe especially in the executive space, for example, it's just a very specific way. The terminology is very specific in terms of how they're able to translate that into something that they understand.
Yeah.
And it took me I mean, that's its own language. I had to learn how to not be too jargony because there's industry terms, even within marketing, where I'm like, oh, yeah, a CTA. Everyone's like, what? That's a call to
Right.
action. Okay, what does that really mean? Right.
I
So it's kind of
understand
some
that.
of that. Yeah.
I get that one.
But you get and understand the core of every single one of those things, right? It's just a nice way to translate that into something approachable and something that can really meet us in that space where ideation and creative flow and the intuition side of it can come online.
Yeah.
Because part of that conversation is really okay, in that boardroom, I had to learn how to bring intuition to the table, but I'll tell you that the energy in that room is very linear and so is the language. So I
Yeah.
want to think a little bit deeper into the infusion of space for developing that relationship with your intuition, particularly if you're coming out of environments where you had to make your own seat at the table for that type of rationale or reasoning as part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I just wanna back up too and talk a little bit about kind of my experience coming up. I've always been a sponge, but especially when I was having conversations with the people who I kind of knew I wanted to take from whatever they were doing, whether it's brand development, whether it was marketing, whether it was learning social media, I would always listen to the specific terms that they would say. And I
Mhm.
would write it down and I would look it up when I went home because I
Mhm.
wanted to really understand. Like I can absorb a lot of what they're saying and repeat it back, like a sponge, parrot, whatever, kind of a little bit of both. But I would
SpongeBob, we can stick with the
sponge
theme.
parrot. And so I would take a lot of that stuff and I would research it, and that's why I felt like I was such like a silent killer when I was
Mhm.
first starting out
Yeah.
because
You're
I really
adaptable.
grew and I grew a lot faster than I should have because I really like just kind and it was not a good grow. Like it was one of those
Growing
things
pains. Mhm.
it was growing way too fast and it was very hard to keep up with.
Mhm.
And which, I think we talked about the triangle the other day, like, if you grow too fast, then you're, giving up on quality or if like, you're
Yep.
paying like, so that triangle was certainly out of whack, but so I took everything in, and I would research it, and I would kind of really get to understand so that when I did have that next conversation with somebody talking about branding or brand strategy or marketing, social media, whatever it was, I could understand and I could talk the talk,
Yeah.
and I learned how to walk the walk because I was able to talk that and tell people, what they kinda wanted to hear based on what they knew that they
Their
need.
understanding. Yeah, and I think when we think about the core of a whole person paradigm or meeting somebody where they're at, that's a big part of the approachability conversation because at any given time, and I ran into this a lot, most people are sitting in a position of thinking they have a good grasp on the thing that they need and want, but not really knowing what they need and want. So we have to start in that space of common understanding. And this is definitely something that's cultivated on the coaching side too. So it translates very much so and really going into the mode of active listening. And I was just talking to somebody that I had coffee with this week about like coaching presence as a topic. And when I think back onto some of the training in this, it was very eye-opening to me, and particularly if you're a problem solver and how easy it is for us to go into our mind while somebody's talking on how we want to solve their problem, what the solution is, what we think they need. And in that, we miss an opportunity to sink deeper into our own intuition, to create space to really hear and absorb what they're saying. And I think that it just reminded me of how you describe your process. I think that's a really big part of it. Now, as you shift beyond that point and the intuition comes online, we start to get these ideas, it's starting to form together. Now, we're being hired to come back with solution recommendations. So it's really cool how the intuitive side, the creating space and the mindfulness skills really come into play for those foundational elements of meeting somebody where they're at.
I agree with you, and I think that, obviously, I don't take anything from my journey, I wouldn't take anything back, but
Mhm.
certainly in retrospect, and this is something that I always try to do, like, what could I have done better? What could I do differently for that next time? And it's really, like, delving into that intuition and really understanding where that's coming from too, so
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
hop into the intuition
Let's
conversation.
do it. She's ready. She clearly wants to enter the chat.
But first, I really want you to explain that triangle, kind of theory
Oh.
we're talking
Mhm.
because I know I butchered it, and I want everybody
No,
to
no.
understand.
Yeah, but the context of this topic came up as Gina and I were really thinking about, our overall bandwidth, our positioning, our strategic pricing models, all of these things, right? And I remember I learned this back in the day when I was deep in like agile marketing and
Right.
project management techniques, human resources. But the project management discipline is where this was brought up. And I remember a colleague of mine, his name is Rob. I loved working with Rob. He had a really great way of kind of just bringing things down into that approachable space of like, okay, I hear that you want this, this, and this, but we have to get that into a place of understanding of what's feasible. And when we
Mm.
talk about feasibility studies, which you'll, hear me weave in here and there, what that really breaks down is this triangle that emerges. And the feasibility studies basically, can we do this shit or not? Can we do it with the budget we have? Can we do it with the timeline we have? And can we do it within that scope of what you think you want to achieve by that time? Right. So, what he said is, you can only ever pick two of that. There's budget, there's timeline, and there's scope.
Mm.
Pick two. If you want a really fast pace with a heavier scope, you're going to pay up. If that doesn't meet your budget, then we need to stretch out that timeline. If we can't stretch out that timeline, our scope is being reduced, meaning what can we achieve by that date that fits into that triangle model. And this is really important for overachievers or people that really want to infuse themselves and do such an amazing job for the client and do it faster and do it really, really well. It's the recipe for burnout.
Mm,
And this can translate into really any setting because as I sank deeper into it, I'm like, this expands beyond just project management. What I really started to think about is where I was saying yes to things that really were a no. And if it was a yes, I was cutting very deeply into my own hide. I
mm.
was overextending myself to make this seem perfect for the person. And yeah, it would be whatever the definition of perfect is, like we nailed it, the scope, the timeline, we found a good budget, but really maybe that was priced lower than the actual output of energy that went into making that happen. Yeah. So that's the
So
triangle.
yeah, no, great explanation. Again, I just speak shit and then she, like, clarifies. So, no.
I love a good framework. I always say that like as much as I love to sink into like my intuition and my creative ideation and going into this space, it was so fun to go into that space. I can personally feel unbalanced when I don't come back to, and this is probably my Capricorn rising, when I don't come back to like a stable, steady system. I remember thinking about this when I first got into leadership, especially when I was overseeing a full creative team. I started to think about what I needed as a creative. And if you're leading a team or you're starting to think about how to meet people where they're at, first think about like what would I need in that situation? What would I really appreciate in that? And I remember talking to the team and I said, look, like my goal is for you all to be able to stay in your creative genius, that you feel supported, that the pathway is clear and I'm up front kind of moving out any rocks and boulders that could hinder your ability to be successful. And a big part of that is coming back to a shared process that we all create together that we feel makes sense to be able to move at the volume we're moving so that you really can feel like your head is always above water. Because otherwise it can sink pretty quickly and it's like it's happening to you, right? And yeah, there's success that's coming, but holy shit, like before you know it, I'm like, I'm on the track for burnout again, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I could go on and on for hours about that.
What a great boss, though, man. Anybody who had you as a boss or a leader, like, what luck. And anybody who had either of us too, like, what a loss. What a loss, man. Y'all
Oh
don't
god,
know what you
oh, here
had.
we go. I think of that like Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's like,
Y'all don't know what you had, man. Listen,
well,
I'm
I will say that like my people were very vocal about appreciating what they had. I always felt very seen because, and I think this speaks to like the community activation people. When you're meeting somebody where they're at,
yeah,
it's not about title. It's not about getting in that room and claiming to know more than anybody. There might be more, technical expertise or tools that have been accumulated, and those need to be pulled out at the right time, particularly if at the end of the day, I knew when to go into leader mode and say, okay, a decision needs to
right.
be made here. And I don't want that to fall on the backs of my team because they need to stay focused on what they're doing. So, shout out to my teams over the years because you always made me feel very seen and appreciated in that regard. And that is what created this cohesion of connection that at that point in my career, I thought I could do that forever. And when the universe has other plans for you, everything gets disrupted and you see the contrast. And this was another part of it's funny, these themes are like kind of core to this conversation that I had this week during that coffee meeting. The contrast is such a huge lesson. It's such a huge growth opportunity. And sticking with the intuition spinoff of this, that podcast that you sent me, which do you remember her name? I don't want to I don't want to butcher it. But I also want to call out the theme as not an original one for me.
Okay,
You're like,
Ellie.
hold on. You know what? Because this is what we do. We do
Yeah,
real time, but
okay.
the a big part of the conversation is where are we seeking control? And how does that control keep us out of our intuition? Man, we text a lot, boo. This was like 2 days ago or 3 days ago, and I'm still scrolling.
Um, so it's Spiritual Shit podcast and
Spiritual shit. Love
Aaliyah
it.
Lovely.
Aaliyah Lovely. Excellent. Thank you. Because I really want to give credit where credit's due. So Gina sent me this episode and it's really about kind of sinking deeper into intuition and how that shows up, how you can cultivate a relationship with your intuition. And one thing, there were many things that stood out to me, but one thing in that podcast episode that really resonated with me is related to the concept of control.
Mm.
And control and intuition, they have a really hard time playing in the sandbox together, right? So even though we might feel called to do something, we want to understand where that move might be rooted in fear, where it might be rooted in control, of needing to have it all figured out. And she put it together so succinctly in saying, where are we avoiding pain? And I was like, damn. And you
Yes.
think about that. If we avoid pain, we're not living. Like, it's just part of life. And
Yep.
that can really put us in a constricted box and keep us paralyzed and not wanting to make a move. But guess what? There's pain in either side of that equation. You're going to hurt just staying still.
And you
Definitely.
think but you think of and that's why I don't blame people for not wanting to feel pain because everything in our society is meant to numb pain, right?
Mhm.
The drugs, the medication. We're not supposed to feel pain. If we feel pain, we immediately wanna go to the doctors, like, "What do I do?" Instead
Mhm.
of looking within and asking, "What do I need?"
Yeah.
And we've never been taught that, at least a lot of us have never been taught that, to look within before even going
Mhm.
to external factors, and I really want to really hone in on that today and let people know that you know what you need more than anything, and if you
Yep.
just simply asked yourself and sat quietly and listened, you would feel parts of your body, that you might need something or something would pop in your head. Um, I had this video that I put on Instagram a couple weeks ago, and it talked about me going to the grocery store and asking my body what it needed, right?
Mhm.
And so part of this is like we have to eat with the seasons that's what we're meant to do, right? And maybe that summer salad doesn't hit as hard or yeah, it's good, but like it's not the nutritional value that we
Yeah,
need
you
right
need
now.
some squash this season, boo. You know
Squash,
what I'm
pumpkin,
saying?
the root
Mhm.
vegetables, the things
Comfort.
like that.
Mhm.
And we have been so far removed from any and all of those processes. So when we're taught to, go to the doctors and have someone else tell us what's going on, and half the time they're not even right. Like they have been taught in this system. You guys have to understand that we have been taught and put in this system of numbing pain and numbing, a lot of the things that are going on inside of us and when we really just can fix it ourselves, right? Fasting can fix a lot of shit. So if
Mhm.
you look into fasting and how it helps with like diseases and how it helps with, just like eating up cancer cells or bad cells or eating up the stuff that's like bad in your body or clearing up the veins and the vessels, all those things, like, you get to understand, but again, we've been so far removed from any and all of those processes
Yeah.
that we have to do our own research and work, so when it comes
Yep.
into intuition, you already have the answer and know what you're supposed to do for a lot of this stuff,
Mhm.
and we just never really sit with it and ask ourselves because we don't trust ourselves. And another point of the intuition is asking for that proof and asking, we're also taught to not trust ourselves and what we believe and what we feel because we need proof. We need an answer. We need someone to tell us and give us permission. Yes, you should start that business. Yes, you should, eat a beet.
Eat a beat, eat
That's
a
all I
beat, eat a
got.
beat, eat a beat.
That's all I got for that one. But it really
Eat a
did
beat should be the title of this house. Put that on a beat. Hey.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
where else you
just
gonna get
saying.
shit like this from? Nowhere. Alright,
Nowhere,
subscribe.
nowhere. Original. No, I totally, totally agree with what you're saying. And like at its core, we're really talking about developing a relationship with the feeling of empowerment.
Yeah.
And depending and one of the things that she talked about in that episode was really kind of looking back into some of the deeper ancient wisdom traditions. And when we were as a species living off a land, and she said, I think she said, There was somebody that had to test if that plant was poison. And what
Yep,
are
it's
they
probably
relying
me, and
on?
I'm
Right, it
here
was
and I'm here to
definitely
speak
you
up.
in a past life. Like animals will know, right? Not all the time. Sometimes they eat shit that isn't good for them for
Right,
sure. But there's
right.
usually a sense to it. And that innate sense of how we move in the world in a way that aligns with our highest good is built into us at a cellular
Yep.
level. And it's incredibly important. So it's interesting the conversation of like external resourcing and internal awareness. And this is what I loved about learning the coaching dynamic, because one might say, okay, why would you go to a coach? You know it yourself. And it's important to find the right potential catalyst
Mhm.
for the empowerment and the awareness. And I read something yesterday that said being able to change your mindset is a privilege. And
Mm.
I was like, that piqued my interest. I said, okay, tell me more. I actually clicked, so I can't remember whose it was.
Clickbait,
Shocker, but I clicked.
clickbait.
And it talked about when we look at the depths of humanity, how far removed we are from our true nature. Mental illness, mental health, all of these things, there's microplastics in our brain. All of these things have brought us really far away from what is good and true for us. And so some people don't even have awareness that it can't create space. It's not in there to be able to choose a different pathway. But
Mm,
I was got to thinking about, okay, how did this show up for me in between where I was, I would say, asleep and awake? Like that's just kind of how it felt. There was a point in time where a question emerged. And the question was, is this really good for me? Is this
mm.
how I want to live? And in that moment, I'm total goosebump. In that moment, my intuition came online because that was my intuition speaking. So if you find yourself in that moment, and this is kind of like as we align our values with the decisions we make externally and all these things, that moment where you're like, I don't know if this is supporting my highest good, your intuition lives there and you're invited to keep going with that thread.
I think that's a great point. I know for me, my moment was when I cut into the pepper. And for anybody who doesn't know the pepper
I
story,
almost sent you a picture when I was cutting my pepper the other day.
I
I
gotta
think of you
tell
every
you,
time.
because a lot of people like ask me, what is the pepper story that you guys always refer to? And the pepper story is last year. And yeah, again, I've only been on my journey for about a year now, a little over a year. And also I was last years old, 30, when I found out that seeds came from vegetables and plants. And the reason why I found this was because I saw something and I was like, I'm going to start gardening. So I go to the store and I grab all these seeds and I'm like, I'm going to get some pepper plants. I'm going to make some cucumbers, all the shit that like I would eat, right? So I had just planted all of those things. And then I go to the store and I get a pepper. And don't you know, when I cut into the pepper, I was able to make that connection of, oh my gosh, this can't be real because there's no way I didn't know this. For 30 years and all the schooling that I did, there ain't no fucking way that I didn't know this. But that's how I found out. So I cut into the pepper and I saw the same seeds that I had just bought from the store inside my pepper. And that's how I started my journey. And I also think about that in a way of like, it's probably not that I wasn't taught, because I probably was taught this. And I probably, did grow up at some point and, somebody said something about this. But was I ready to understand it in the way, or was I ready to receive it at that moment? And obviously I wasn't, right? So
Mhm,
now at this moment, I'm 30 years old, I'm cutting to the pepper, I'm able, and I'm in a space where I'm able to receive this message, and
mhm,
now it's completely changed my life. So all the work that I have done, again, I went through my spiritual awakening, I think I was 27 when I started mine. So starting to kind of do that, and then you start to realize, and then you start to do your own research. And that was the thing that opened the can of worms for me,
mhm,
of just understanding the organic stuff, understanding how far our food travels in order to get in the grocery store, which is thousands of miles away. Like we don't have bananas around here, people. Like where do you think they come from? When everything says they're a product of Mexico, a product of whatever, like think of how long that takes to get to our shelves, right? So
mhm.
So I've been really on this, and this is something that I'm super passionate about just because I know that it's part of my purpose of why I'm here, and it's part of what's bringing me back to something that truly connects me to a rootedness that I've
Yes.
never felt before.
Yeah, it's such a great example because when we talk about that external catalyst,
Yep.
that isn't always somebody telling you that you need to do something a certain way. I
Oh,
heard something the other
whoa.
day that said, when we see potential in somebody, we actually see how we would do it. And I
Oh,
was like, ugh. So that was a catalyst, like, that thought nugget was a catalyst for me to go deeper into my awareness on when and how in the past I've lived from somebody's potential versus the reality of who they are. So your ability to kind of notice in that moment, right? And this is for anybody listening when we talk about intuition. I love that we're able to bring it down to like these practical, like
yeah.
day-to-day things. When something stops you in your tracks, like that, there is like this syncing up of timelines of who you were and who you're heading to become.
Yeah, it
And
was
that
beautiful.
catalyst freaking shows up. Like it's the definition of when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I love that every time I hear it, it's like, who would have thought that that thing, that moment would spur this
Yep.
catalytic moment for your awakening. So it's different for everybody. Like you don't always need to be on retreat in Italy to have your awakening. It happens in the pockets of day-to-day life if you're paying attention. And I always like to kind of break down the difference of what intuition feels like versus fear and anxiety
Mhm.
because they both tell you to
Very
do
close.
things.
Yeah.
They both tell you to do things. And the more I sunk into that question, somebody asked it in a workshop once. I was like, how does that show up for me? And I would love your take on this and how this shows up for you as well. I started to realize that my intuition was much slower. It was more it came from a place of calm knowing. And when I was in my space of like trying to control an outcome or figure it out, right? We think we're figuring it out. I'm feeling called to do this thing. It's kind of crunchy, it's faster moving. There's overthinking going on. Typically when I'm in that space for too long, this other part of me, it's like this constant like stream that is flowing that if I don't pay attention to it, that bitch starts to turn into a motherfucking typhoon. Is that the
Yeah.
big wave or is that the other one? Typhoon? Is that the big wave? Whatever one is the big wave.
Tsunami. Tsunami.
Tsunami. What's a typhoon?
I think that's a spinning.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look that up. Anyways, you get what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
I'm curious when as you're like sinking deeper into how intuition and what the intuitive process looks like for you because this shows up in our work too. It's like this thing that emerges. It's pulling us towards it versus like pushing us along.
Yeah.
How would you describe that? Do you notice anything?
First off, I just looked it up, and a typhoon is like the cyclone. So it is
Okay.
like like the
So
spinning.
not that one. The spinning
This
is the anxiety. So the typhoon is the brain and then the
okay,
other one is the intuition. That's how I'll
got it.
frame it.
Honestly, they are really close for me, and I think when I get both of them, have everything in my gut. My gut
Mhm.
tells me everything, whether it's something that's bad, whether it's something I'm excited for, it will trigger, and then I have to kinda connect it to my brain and go
Mhm.
into, okay, what is that stemming from? And usually I'll peel it apart from that layer because they sit and they feel the same exact way. Like I
Mm.
know that when I was working for example, a lot of people would say, okay, that's fear and anxiety from the police department when I would go into, my work every day. It was not. It was coming from a place of I knew that I did not belong here. And
Wasn't
so
aligned. Mhm.
no, and but it felt the exact same way that I would get anxiety about something.
Mhm.
And so I have to kind of connect and that's why they say that there's a huge brain and gut relationship
Heck yeah, it's like the
because
second brain, right? Mhm.
yeah, because that for me is what starts it, but then I have to kind of peel apart what that actually, peel apart the onion layers of like,
Yeah.
okay, is this something that I'm feeling? Like, what is it stemming from? Okay. And sometimes I don't have an answer, but it's just kind of that knowing of like, I need to do this or
Mhm.
here's a direction that I need to go.
Yep.
as
Yep.
far as what I'm feeling. But if I get really bad anxiety, it's usually followed by, for me, at least recently what it's been, it's usually followed by thoughts of like death or I don't want to be morbid or
Like
anything
worst
like
case scenario
that,
kind of
like
thinking.
worse health, something I'm gonna die from or I'm
Mhm.
gonna get bad news from. And then I have to stop it in that thought process and be like, no, listen. I actually control how I'm gonna think about these things and I control actually how my body responds. So if I go into that deeper layer of I'm gonna die, I'm gonna have bad news at the doctor, I'm gonna have, something's gonna happen. Usually it will.
Mm,
Usually I will manifest that. And that's something because we are so deeply rooted in that manifestation energy too, that no matter whether it's bad or good, we're gonna
right.
manifest that to come
We're gonna
true.
speak it and think it into existence.
And
Yeah.
a lot of things that I wanna pull it back to just like when we're talking about going into the doctors and things like that too. Um, there is a huge piece of this, and whether it's a doctor or whether it's someone telling you, even you think about like childhood growing up, if somebody tells you that you are something and you start to believe that, then that's what you start to
You're in a
become.
box. Mhm.
And so like, I would just really want to encourage everyone to take everything with a grain of salt and just kind of pull that apart for yourself
Mhm.
and know that you don't have to be anything that anybody's telling you. You don't have to be a disease that you're going through, an illness, whatever. You can pull yourself out of that. And usually if you get your brain to see yourself, it will rewire your entire body. So it will
Mhm.
start to make you healthy. It will start, but you have to believe that
Yeah.
first.
I a visual popped into my mind when you were talking just about the brain and the gut and how it is often spoken that that's the second brain, the second mind. And I started to see that, when we start up here and we drop down into our gut, you have to go through your heart center.
Yeah.
And that is almost in and of itself this like purification process of kind of translating that anxiety, that fear, that thought through a place of your true soul, your true being, your true heart, and bringing it down into a deeper knowing. So there's information that you can still pull from what our mind is doing to protect us. And maybe there's a part of that that is a lesson learned or something that we're bringing forth into our own development of wisdom. But we cannot forget the process of letting it pass through the energy of our heart, the energy of our being that has that deeper knowing. And what I really love about, and I always am going to talk about human design because I'm obsessed with it.
Yep.
But what really kind of sparked a moment of awareness for me in human design is there's almost like a predisposition built in depending on what your human design is. And if you have an open energy center, for example, down in your sacral or your solar plexus, you're more likely to absorb the energy of what somebody else's fear is on that topic. So you might have something that's like, shit, like I can't get to a place of clarity because the energy that you're working with is actually somebody else's. And
Yeah.
that in and of itself can create anxiety. So when we do our human design coaching with people and kind of go deeper into that, it's really talk about like an external catalyst, right? It's not there to tell you who you are.
Right.
It's there to present opportunity to think differently about how you're wired, stick with what resonates. Like that resonated with me. And I carried that forth in a way that created more awareness, more opportunity for awareness.
Yeah, and at the very baseline, you are in full control of what your life is. We have free will for a reason here, which means that you can choose to believe, to do whatever it is that you want. And external factors, if they don't serve you, then you don't have to take them with you. And I
Yep.
think that a lot of people forget that they have the ability to choose, whether it's career, whether it is growing up, we know that we have the ability to choose, right? We have this free will. But I don't think people really understand the magnitude of what free will
Hmm.
in this entire consciousness and society that we're talking about is.
Correct.
And that goes into the very basics of even just you have free will to understand even what your own intuition and body wants and
What does it
is.
feel like for you? Yep, as it's different for everybody. So developing that relationship is key. And this goes back to what you said earlier. If you put yourself in a box, and this can happen in familiar patterns and societal placements and things, there's so much goes into that conversation. But if you're kind of born into a circumstance, right? And that box is really it's like cement walls now, right? Like you're in it. And that is the definition of becoming a product of your environment, is there's a belief system that's kind of inherently on some level, usually unconsciously built in, of like, this is just what life is. And if you don't have anything to compare it to, if you don't have a contrast of, wow, I
Yep.
really can activate my free will and climb out of, I'll use the example of poverty and kind of thinking about, climbing out of bankruptcy with my family and going into this other space of abundance. That process is a gritty process, but it is possible. And when that feeling comes forth, that intuition activated is free will. That is the power, right? And I just love thinking about the immense power we have as humans to activate that free will.
Yeah, and even just saying that you notice a pattern with your family, right? Everybody in my family is poor. You don't have to be that way. When I just
Nope.
got full goosebumps,
Mhm.
like because it's been this way. That's the way that it has to be. No,
Mhm.
but you have to have enough intuition and awareness of what's going on and recognizing those patterns in order to change it. Which ties us back to everything is that intuition and that creating a space that's safe for even just you to go inward and say, is this what I want? Right.
Mhm.
If you're in a space where you don't want to go into work every day and you hate the environment that you're in, okay, recognizing that you don't want it. And then here's what's next. What do I
Yep.
do?
Yep.
How do I navigate? And that's where people like us are there to support you. And if you don't have people that are directly in your network or around you to support you, it's going to be hard, but just know that there are tons of other resources and people out there, and you do have the free will in order to leave something that does
Yes.
not serve you,
Yep.
okay?
That's
That's
a great way to tie it back to the mission of feeling called.
Yep,
There is that phase after you felt the call where you're presented with a decision to answer it or not.
yep.
And when we answer the call, it's going to require different networks, different people, different support system, different ways of thinking for ourselves. And you don't have to do that journey alone. That's what we're here for.
And you will lose people along the way, and that's just how
Mhm.
it happens,
Yep.
but knowing that you are losing people to gain parts of yourself and pieces of yourself that you can't even imagine are going to surface, so
Mhm.
find those people who are doing the thing that you want, surround yourself with them, ask them questions, take them out to coffee, and you will soon develop that network around you that is going to get you to where you want to go.
Yep. Stay very comfortable in your own skin. That's what's going to attract the realness. It's important to develop that. So, what a fun way to tie together all these topics, because it really infuses like the day-to-day intention pieces, the feeling of being called. What does it mean to really answer it? So, yeah, I just thoroughly enjoyed how we pieced all that together.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Be real, y'all. Be safe
Be
and
real.
know
Stay
that
free
we
will. He needs to be freed. Free will. I'm gonna get a shirt that says free will.
will. People will be like, "Who's
Exactly.
Will?"
Exactly. Free him.
All right, y'all. Until next time, we love you.